It must really suck to be Joe Biden right about now. The poor old codger thought he was going to be relaxing on vacation most of this month, but in the event, he wound up authoring what one retired British general, and that's not a guy who has any rooting interest in U.S. politics, so in all likelihood he's calling it like he really sees it, as the most catastrophic foreign policy debacle by any Western power since the end of the Second World War. And that really puts things starkly into perspective, I think, because think of all the major blunders that are covered in that time frame. You've got France's misadventure in Southeast Asia, our own misadventure in Southeast Asia that we inherited from them. You've got the joint British-French disaster of the Suez Canal crisis in 1956, from which arguably both French and British prestige never recovered, and which marked the end of each of their runs as a major world power, at least insofar as the military sense. But according to a number of objective, well-qualified observers who know of whence they speak, Kabul Joe's Afghanistan shit show of 2021 surpasses all the Western foreign policy blunders that predated it, going all the way back to 1945. So I think Joe is going to get his wish of being an historically noteworthy president, a transformative figure, if you will, though obviously for all the wrong reasons. For history may well record that the United States' run as a preeminent world superpower came to a sudden, ignominious, humiliating end while he was the man with his hand on the tiller. He will not, however, get his wish of spending the second half of August mostly lazing around Camp David or Wilmington, watching reruns of Matlock and Murder, She Wrote, eating all the applesauce and ice cream he can shove down his gullet, not even having to put his teeth in most days. It was supposed to be just like the campaign, damn it, but they keep making me do all this president stuff, even when I don't want to. It's so goddamn annoying. When I was a senator or a vice president, I could always disappear for days or weeks at a time, and nobody cared. But now it's like I have to do stuff every single day. Who the hell signed me up for this anyway? Jill? Hunter? I know it was one of you, because you two are the only people whose names I can ever remember. Wait, scratch that. I also have a dead son named Bo, who I like to use as a political human shield whenever the questions get too hard. So Joe wound up having himself a pretty disastrous weekend, when all he really had to do was go to a couple of places and maintain a credible veneer of lucidity. But we know how that usually goes, don't we? On Saturday, he up and dozed off during his first meeting with the new Prime Minister of Israel, and the defenders he still has in the fake news media have tried to spin this as a non-issue by pointing out that Ronald Reagan once also dozed off during a meeting with Pope John Paul II at the Vatican during his second term in office. But they don't mention the fact that Reagan had just finished a 12-hour plane ride, and it was about 90 minutes into the Pope droning on and on and on, reading some papal something or other from a prepared text in a barely audible monotone. So all things considered, Reagan stayed awake probably longer than you or I would have, given the same set of circumstances. But all Joe had to do was shuffle downstairs to the East Room, shake hands with the Prime Minister, give a short statement, and listen to a short statement. All that was being asked of him was maybe 25 minutes of semi-alertness and lucidity, and he falls dead-ass asleep like a high school girl who just got slipped her first roofie. That's a great look, Joe. Just outstanding. But matters didn't improve any on Saturday, when Joe invited the news media to Dover Air Force Base to watch him oversee the offloading and dignified transfer of the remains of our 12 Marines and one Navy corpsman who perished in the Kabul airport attack last Thursday. And you may find yourself asking, why were the news media there? I don't remember these events having cameras present when Trump was the president, or when Obama was the president, or when George W. Bush was the president. And you would be correct in that recollection, because all three of those presidents specifically forbade the presence of news media at those events. But not our man Joe. He decided this would be a good chance to appear presidential and recover some of his personal credibility that he's pissed away in the last 10 days. Did he have any concern for the family members of the dead servicemen and women who might prefer not to be on national television while they were grieving for their dead children? Nope, he sure as hell didn't. Because this is politics, damn it. And Uncle Joe needs to get himself some good footage. So you fellas bring those cameras up nice and close. Get right up in the faces of those crying mothers and fathers while I'm pretending to be the caring, concerned empathizer-in-chief. Oh, and did I mention I've got a dead son who once served in the military? So obviously I know exactly what it's like to lose a child in combat. Except this stupid old bastard couldn't even get through his own stage-managed photo op, the whole point of which was for him to score political points on the backs of 13 dead young Americans, who became dead as a direct result of his own incompetence because, amazingly, astoundingly, he gets caught checking his watch, with an annoyed look on his face that seems to say, "Can't they carry those caskets a little faster? Murder, She Wrote starts in 30 minutes, and now I'm going to miss the start of the episode, and I'm going to get cranky." Now, this has already gone down in history as one of the top 2 most infamous presidential watch-checking moments, the first of which was when George H.W. Bush glanced at his timepiece in the middle of the first debate back in 1992, a moment which was immediately seized upon by the proto-fake news media and both of his opponents, Independent Ross Perot and Democrat Bill Clinton, all of whom used it to portray Bush as being aloof and out of touch, and it probably contributed to him failing to win re-election that year. But the Joe Biden watch check of Sunday, 29 August 2021 deserves to live in far greater infamy in the historical record of presidential faux pas, because my God, man, what the hell is actually wrong with you? You are the Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Armed Forces. This is a solemn event where the remains of our fallen service members are being repatriated for burial. There are only 2 things that this situation calls for from you: stand at attention and render a salute. But that's what a dignified man would do, and President Joe Biden is not a dignified man. Far from it. Hit the music, Jim Eagle. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where the only timepieces we have are hourglasses and candles, and we never wear them on our wrists. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the program. I am your eponymous host and humble servant, and I want to speak briefly a little bit more about the Afghanistan disaster before I transition to tonight's main topic, which is the wholesale degradation of the quality and ultimately the utility of our current day political discourse. As we know, the main real-world result of Joe Biden's botched departure from Afghanistan is that tens, possibly hundreds of thousands of Afghans are going to wind up being imported into the United States and living here permanently in numbers that are well above and beyond the number of people who actually worked with our military personnel and whose lives would be imminently in danger if they stayed behind. Because that's just what the Democrats do. Let's face it, every event anywhere in the world gets turned into a reason why we have to import thousands and thousands of foreigners into the country, followed by their entire extended families and everyone they've ever met. Then we have to immediately get them suckling from the federal government welfare teat, because then they're more likely to become reliable Democrat voters of the future. But there's been precious little discussion of the fact that our government, in its zeal to import as many new immigrants as possible by absolutely any means necessary, is sowing the seeds of the next 9/11. It was reported early last week that at the Taliban checkpoints outside the airport, rather than allowing U.S. citizens to get through, they were confiscating their passports and turning them right back around. Now, why do you suppose that could be? Because once you have an authentic U.S. passport in hand, it's a very simple matter of just swapping out the photograph or finding a guy who looks vaguely familiar or similar, and boom, some Taliban or ISIS guy who wants nothing from life but the chance to kill a bunch of Americans just got himself a free plane ride to the U.S. and permanent residency, no questions asked. Because who's going to spot the doctored passport at the airport? The 20-year-old Marine infantryman who has no training as a customs officer and is more worried about trying to spot a suicide bomber? We're hearing lots of stories about people getting off these flights, both here in the US and in the UK, who have no papers or documents of any kind in their possession. So if you put two and two together, that seems to indicate that they are using hastily doctored passports to get onto the plane in Kabul. Then they're dumping the passports before they arrive at the destination, where there are actual customs officers on duty who know what a doctored passport looks like. No, I'm sorry, I got no passport. No papers. Guess I lost them somewhere. Whoopsie! We have left behind untold thousands of U.S. citizens in Afghanistan who Joe Biden promised he would get out, which was always a damn bald-faced lie. And in the process, we've allowed some of their stolen passports to be used by very, very bad people to gain entry into the U.S. homeland. Remember, all it took was 19 guys with expired student visas to perpetrate the events of 9/11. And I guarantee you that in the last 72 to 96 hours, we have unwittingly allowed entry to far more than 19 violent jihadis with similarly murderous intentions. So call me paranoid if you want, but I would strongly advise staying away from big cities and large crowds for the next 20 years or so, because Joe Biden and his administration have just created a terrorist wonderland that poses far more numerous hazards to the average American than which existed at the dawn of this century. But that doesn't matter anyway, because this is all about Democrats winning elections. And if there's anything we know beyond all doubt about today's Democrats, is that they would rather rule over a bombed-out dystopian hellscape than to share power in a prosperous, united, culturally vibrant America. But I think most Democrat voters have no idea that's what their party has become, because their thinking and their judgment are so clouded by the beer goggles of political tribalism, where one just reflexively votes for their home team every 4 years like it's a baseball or football game. You know, I'm on the blue team, I hate the red team, so that's all the thought I need to put into it. And as loath as I am to talk about Bill Maher on this program, I think he's an instructive example of that mentality. When someone asks Bill Maher to explain his political worldview, he says very matter-of-factly that, well, the way I was brought up, the Democrats are the good guys, the Republicans are the bad guys, and the reason we're Democrats is because we're liberals and they're conservatives, and we don't like conservatives. And sure, yeah, maybe in a pre-1965 world there was some amount of merit in that paradigm, but here's the problem. In the third decade of the 21st century, the Democrat Party is about as far from liberal as you can get. Today's Democrats feel nothing but hatred and revulsion toward the principles that are supposed to be the cornerstones of liberalism. Liberals are not supposed to be fans of unlimited, unchecked government power. Liberals are not supposed to be proponents of mass censorship. Liberals are not supposed to be supporters of all-out assaults on the bodily autonomy of the individual citizen. These things are the opposite of liberalism. Yet the vast majority of today's Democrat voters fully support all of that odious draconian bullshit, while at the same time describing themselves as liberals. And it never occurs to them how incompatible the one is with the other. Now, conservatives, I think, tend to at least be more clear-eyed about the true nature of the Republican Party. And in a lot of cases, it was the GOP's treatment of Donald Trump that finally pulled the wool from over their eyes and caused them to see things for what they are. Now, from where I sit today, I couldn't tell you the last time I encountered a conservative voter who is an enthusiastic rah-rah fan of the GOP brand in the same way that Democrat voters are hardcore fanboys for their party brand, irrespective of how absurdly far removed it is from what they claim are the principles they believe in. If anything, today's conservative voter holds his nose when he votes Republican on the grounds that, oh well, this is all we've got, so there's no other choice. Which is a regrettable attitude, because how much of a leftward lurch are you willing to tolerate while still giving your vote to a party that tried with all its might to deny its nomination to the only two great conservative presidents of the last 40 years? It is not overstating things to say that today's GOP mainstream is to the left of where Barack Obama was when he first ran for president in 2008. That version of Barack Obama was against same-sex marriage. When was the last time you heard that view expressed by any elected Republican or any Republican candidate? When's the last time you heard a Republican speak out against drug abuse? When's the last time you heard a Republican extol the virtues of Christian morality? You know, the things that used to be the linchpins of the Republican philosophy. And you can't get any of today's Republicans to pay them even the slightest lip service because the GOP and its leadership are hidebound, and fatally so, in my estimation, by the belief that being a conservative just means maintaining a certain distance between yourself and the craziest radical leftist. Meanwhile, every cultural institution, every governmental institution, even the armed forces and professional sports have fallen under the boot heel of radical leftism, while the Republicans did nothing but to smile politely while trying not to offend anybody. There are a lot of reasons why our national political discourse is more useless today than it arguably ever has been at any previous point in our history. Social media are one, because social media are brain poison, intellectual crack cocaine, if you will. The social media algorithms result in people inhabiting political echo chambers where they only ever encounter like-minded people who think all the same things they think. So if you're a person who gets all their information about the world from their preferred social media platform, especially if you're someone who adheres to the currently fashionable illiberal leftist establishment-approved worldview, and you accidentally one day happen to run into some people who are mainstream conservatives having a middle-of-the-road discussion about some perfectly mundane, uncontroversial thing, you will come away horrified and scandalized. You'll go shrieking to your friends about these horrible right-wing Nazi bigots you encountered. Because you have allowed some Silicon Valley billionaire to steal your brain out of your head and to imbue you with a completely and utterly warped view of the world and the people in it and what they think and why they think it. The people who used to be the news media also deserve their fair share of blame for the degradation of our civil discourse. It's not without good cause that I refer to those people as fake news performance artists, because that is exactly what they've become. The product they make is an entertainment product, which is designed not to inform and enlighten, but to pander or outrage, depending upon who's watching. If you're a conservative watching CNN, you will recoil in horror. If you're a leftist watching CNN, you will hear comforting confirmations of all the things you would prefer to believe about the world. And Jeff Zucker doesn't give a shit which kind of viewer you are. That guy is a reality TV producer who was hired to turn a news product into an entertainment product. As long as your eyes are on the product he makes, whether you're watching out of indignant rage or out of a desire for the affirmation of your priors, he wins either way. But the biggest single reason why our political conversations have become an exercise in hateful futility is the fact that our two political parties, these two ancient ossified institutions that have persisted in a state of symbiosis for over 160 years, which exist only to ensure their continued existence, are not what we think they are. And they haven't been for a hell of a long time, because we don't have a liberal party and we don't have a conservative party. We have one authoritarian party and one soft, squishy, kind of neoliberal libertarian party. The Democrat Party has no purpose but to grow government and make it more powerful. The Republican Party has no purpose but to oppose the Democrats. Neither one has any actual set of ideas that might be attractive to an independent-minded person with a functioning intellect and a desire to build a better society. It stopped being a contest of ideas many decades ago, before even your host was born. It's just the red team and the blue team now. You vote for the blue team because those guys on the red team are too dangerous. We can't let them win. You vote for the red team because those guys on the blue team are too dangerous. We can't let them win. Meanwhile, people who actually have coherent philosophies of which to speak, be they liberal or conservative, they have no representation in either the Democrat or Republican parties. But we keep going through the motions every 2 years, every 4 years, dutifully ticking the box for the blue team or the red team in the expectation that it's going to change something, which it of course never does, and the downward spiral just continues and accelerates until you look up one day and your central government is being run by an end-stage dementia patient whose cabinet secretaries all got their jobs not because they have any relevant skills or experience, but because they know how to vomit out the fashionable woke platitudes of the day. And you can call me naive, you can call me a Pollyanna for what I'm about to say, and do feel free to yell at me in the comments, but I continue to think there is one man in this world who has the power to smash that false paradigm all by himself once and for all. And that is if Donald J. Trump runs for president in 2024 and wins as an unaffiliated write-in candidate. No party entanglements, nobody can try to keep him off the ballot. Just write in his name if you want him for your president. If he runs and wins that way, the 160-year Republican-Democrat duocracy is over and not a moment too soon. And don't try to scoff at me saying there's no way a write-in candidate can win, because a guy named Ron Packard was my congressman for 25 years, and he won his first election as a write-in candidate. It can be done, even for the presidency, and I would submit that Trump is the man to do it. And that's it for me. Thank you for watching. See you Wednesday. Get off my lawn.